Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. How's it going? We are continuing on with the horror tale. We're coming close to the finish. The finish line is in sight. In fact, the finish line has been reached. I'm going backwards in videos now. I finished the fourth tarot card, which is tomorrow's for you guys. It was yesterday for me, because I started with this thing. That was my first video with this earpiece microphone. Earpiece microphone. And, ooh, that's hot water. Now I'm going backwards while it's still fresh in my mind. I'm going to do this one today. And then go do the last one you saw, the vampire, tomorrow. And forward and backwards and backwards. So, back to number one. And then you'll see number one and then think I'm getting worse and worse as I go along because I'm more and more awkward with this thing. Because now it's only my second day using it. We are on Stephen King, and we are on Tales of the Tarot. We've done Tales of the Hook, of course. We are in Danse Macabre with Stephen. Hey, isn't he great? Yes, so of course, Tales of the Tarot involve certain archetypes, tropes, or conventions in which the stories will conform to an extent. The tarot cards are the thing without a name, typified by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The vampire, typified by Dracula by Bram Stoker. And now we're on to the werewolf, typified by Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Oh, shoot. 1 second. Once again, these can be found here. I recommend getting this one because it does have the intro by Stephen King, which is well worth the price of admission, especially if you got it as I did from Goodwill for 99 cents. It's $7.95 new. I recommend it new. You can also get it for free from LibriVox.org. That's where I get all my public domain audiobooks, and they're great. Hey, how can you go wrong with public domain audiobooks? Now, let me see, where was I? I forgot to get one done. Fish and Monsters, is it not? What video was that? Nope, I'm not even close. Oh, yes, I am. Where am I? I'm very confused. That's what I am. So, oh, that's where I am. I'm not close to that. 1 second. That's magnification, massification. Close. I'm getting closer. Oh, crap. I forgot one picture, which I'm going to put up. I don't have many pictures. It's a picture that I've mentioned before. I don't have many pictures for today, but I do have a stack here of DVDs, a stack here of DVDs, a stack here of books, and a stack here of DVDs, and a stack here of DVDs. Because we're on werewolves, and werewolves are my thing. That's the one I'm after. Great. The werewolf is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, according to Stephen King. And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he has do a quick synopsis of the plot. That'd probably be good. Dr. Jekyll is a Apollonian guy. He is treading the upward path according to everybody who asks. He's a great guy, but he's not really a great guy. He's a hypocrite. What he wants is to be seen as a great guy, but what he really wants is to experience all the pleasures that he can get. He wants to be seen as, oh no, I don't want to drink anything. I just want to, I'll drink some water. But he really wants to chug a keg or something. He wants to go to downtown and watch the plays that are being portrayed that might be a bit risque, but he doesn't want to have people know that he's going down to watch them. He wants to whore it up, but he doesn't want to be known as a John, etc., etc., etc. I think that's more. It's not in the book itself. That's implied, but it's certainly illustrated more in like Mary Riley. It's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie that had John Malkovich as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and what's her name as Mary Riley, his assistant / housekeeper. Anyway, so he creates a potion so that he can experience all this great stuff that he wants to experience and not get caught and not have anybody know that it's really him. So the alter ego that he creates, Mr. Hyde, is doing all this great stuff that he wants to do, but Mr. Hyde's got an asshole streak to him. He tramples a little girl underfoot and then later kills a guy. He's just not a good guy. And Dr. Jekyll is actually fighting him, which is weird. It's not really Dr. Jekyll doing it. The potion has taken over. The alter ego has taken over. And at the end, Dr. Jekyll gets control of the body back, but is in the guise of Mr. Hyde. So he looks like Mr. Hyde, but he thinks like Dr. Jekyll, which is as bad as you can get. So the werewolf is not exactly a straight fission monster. We're not talking about the fission monsters in Noel Carroll. There is plot points that need to be looked at here. The werewolf has to have the concept of internal evil and the Apollonian-Dionysian conflict. Now, Apollonian and Dionysian, let's start with that one because it's a little bit more difficult to explain. Internal evil is evil inside yourself. That's easy to explain. The werewolf is evil. It kills people, and it's inside you. So the internal evil is pretty easy to understand. There's evil inside you. If you let it out, it'll kill people. And sometimes it comes out, and you don't have a choice in the matter. That's the horror. The Apollonian-Dionysian conflict, that's a little bit more difficult to explain. Let's see. Oh, one of the points King makes. Here we go. What was it? Shoot. One of the points King makes is that there is... all the stories have an Apollonian-Dionysian conflict. When writers are talking about... when people in the 20th century are talking about Apollonian and Apollo and Dionysus, Apollonian and Dionysian things, they're not really talking about the Greek gods. They're talking about Nietzsche. Or if you want to be really pretentious, you can pronounce it Nietzsche. But don't. I don't know. It's probably the proper way to pronounce it. But Americans will pronounce it Nietzsche. And I'm okay with that. Nietzsche. I'm fine with that. I don't have to go out of my way to sound cool. Nietzsche, or Nietzsche, pronounces talks about Apollonian and Dionysian in Birth of Tragedy, in which he talks about lots of stuff. Nietzsche is a little bit much to get into today, so I'm going to jump over a bit of that. If you're oversimplifying it, which King does not, but most of the readers will, the Apollonian is good and the Dionysian is bad. What it actually is Apollonian is rational. Actually, let's try this. It does relate back to Greek gods. Apollo and Dionysus. Apollo is the god of, the muses, had the muses attached to him. Arts. Actually, I have Wikipedia says Apollo is the god of sun, dreams, and reason, and Dionysus is the god of wine, ecstasy, and intoxication. King makes a point of changing it to psychoanalysis, psychoanalytical terms. 3 decades, that's what it was. It's 3 decades before Freud came up with psychoanalysis, the concepts of id, ego, and superego. However, Stevenson beats Freud to the punch, but the Apollonian side, the Dr. Jekyll side, can be seen as the superego, the side that is projected to everybody. And in fact, the house mirrors that. His house on one side is the house of Dr. Jekyll, and on the back is entering a back alley where really bad stuff goes down. The back alley of any inner city, anywhere, where it's grimy, there's people that are supposed to be there are there, up to no good. So, and then Dionysian is that dark alley side. It's the id. It's the pleasure-seeking side. So there might be drug dealers and hookers in that alley because that's the pleasure-seeking side. Not that saying the pleasure side is wrong, but if you get hooked up in drugs and hookers, you're probably going to get in trouble at some point. So that's a good way of putting it. Dionysian isn't bad, Apollonian isn't good, but Dionysian does have the pleasure-seeking id, pleasure center, id in psychoanalysis terms, Dionysian in Nietzschean terms. The Mr. Hyde is a pleasure seeker, and his pleasures are not nice pleasures. They're not butterflies. They're sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In the in 1900, well, no. Well, when was this? Goodness, I don't even know. 3 decades before Freud, so we're talking 1840s? Is that right? I'm sure someone will let me know if I'm wrong on that. I don't know. I don't remember. In this, when I was reading over the notes, I did notice in Stephen King's Danse Macabre that this guy, as of 1980, it's been changed since then, a little bit, not much. He was the only guy, Frederick March, was the only guy to win Best Actor in a horror movie for playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think that has changed. I think Anthony Hopkins won Best Actor in Silence of the Lambs. I could be wrong, and I don't think much has happened since then. But I haven't seen this version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Funny things about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In the book, there's 2 funny things. In the book, Mr. Hyde is a lot smaller than Dr. Jekyll, because I guess it makes more sense that someone would shrink than to grow big. And the other big one, which doesn't make any sense really at all, because you're breaking the you're breaking uh, a law of thermodynamics either way. But he seemed shrunken and runty and deformed. That's how Mr. Hyde is portrayed. In most things that we see, he gets bigger, bulkier, more hulking. And Hulk is probably a good example. He splits into Bruce Banner and the Hulk. And we're going to go into Werewolf as superhero at some point too, because a lot of these movies, this stack here, is Werewolf as superhero. And a few of these books too. Yeah. So, however, in the book, he's shorter. There's no smoking potion. Stevenson didn't like the idea of a smoking potion. He's called it Hugger Mugger. That's King's quote from him. I think that's just a great term. The other big thing about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is going to seem ridiculous to us, is there's a big reveal. And the big reveal is they're the same person. And everybody's supposed to go, spoiler alert. I'm sorry if that ruined it for anybody, because it didn't ruin it for anybody. If anybody who's seen a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Bugs Bunny cartoon knows that they're the same person. It's usually a little doddering old guy, and he drinks the potion, and he becomes, a 12-foot tall, slobbering Hulk beastie with ragged hair. It's ridiculous. Anyway, everybody knows in our culture that it's part of our cultural consciousness that Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll are the same dude. However, it was a shock for the first guy who read it, and then probably spoiled it to everybody else around him. Yeah. So, for a horror werewolf, I agree with King on this. There's a lot of werewolves that don't count as horror werewolves. This stack and this stack. I don't count as horror werewolves, and probably some of these stacks that are just in between too. Don't count as horror werewolves because either there's no split. Internal evil. There's no split. There's no internal evil. It's all external, which is sort of some of these in here. There's no Apollonian Dionysian conflict either. There's no wanting to have the not hypocritical, but not having the one side and having the other side. The best version is the original, the Lon Chaney Wolfman. Larry Talbot is the Wolfman. He's a good guy. He says his prayers by night. But he was bitten by a werewolf and becomes a werewolf. And he fights himself when he does that, but it doesn't work. He just becomes a werewolf. He doesn't have a say in it. That's sort of the tragedy in werewolves, and that's why I think I like the genre so much. He loses control. And of course, let's just grab this stack. This is about the size of the stacks we're talking about here. That one, of course. Even the remake, the Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Hugo Weaving. Also, I don't remember who the Emily Blunt is the woman, the interest. It doesn't turn out too well. It's a remake. It's not as good as the original. I don't think you'll ever find anything as good as the original. And it is most illustrative of the point I'm trying to make into what a werewolf movie should be, as to be horror. And I'm sure King agrees or comes close to it. King also makes the point of saying There hasn't been a good werewolf movie in about 30 years. He makes a point of making fun of Moon of the Wolf, which I have here. Good catch. With Geoffrey Lewis. There's another guy in it. The main David Jansen, who was supposed to be some big shot back in the 70s, but I don't know who he is now. Geoffrey Lewis, I know. He's been in a lot of stuff, and he's good. But it wasn't a good movie. I can't blame Geoffrey Lewis. Jeffrey. It's spelled Joffrey. And if you don't know, it's Juliette Lewis's dad. If you know Juliette Lewis more than Geoffrey Lewis, you'd know him if you saw him. It's one of those guys. He's a good guy, though. You should definitely check out his work. It wasn't a good movie. It was a good book. Actually, Moon of the Wolf is here by Leslie Whitten. It was in the book. It took place in the 1920s, 10s era in the South. The big house, rich white guy was having an affair with a nurse who was bringing him like wolfsbane potion to cure his werewolfness. But it was a black nurse, and they're sort of in love, but she got pregnant, and he goes werewolf and kills her because he doesn't want to have a mulatto child. And there's a lot of racial tension in there. Her brother, which would have been Geoffrey Lewis's character if Geoffrey Lewis was black and they went with it, which is smart, and they didn't upgrade it to the 70s, update it to the 70s, which didn't make any sense, was a great character as well. He was blamed at first, and then the sheriff and the werewolf's sister or niece. I don't remember which one. Cousin, maybe? Something along those lines is a love interest, and they go together to try to find out who's killing all these people, because since the guy's not getting the potion from the nurse anymore, he's going werewolf a lot. I thought it was a great book. I really do enjoy the book. The movie is worth seeing pretty much only if you get it two for $1. I haven't even seen the Swiss Conspiracy. I don't know what it's about. It's not a werewolf movie. I just bought it for Moon of the Wolf. It's not that great. It's not a good movie. It's worth watching because I like werewolf movies. The werewolf itself isn't bad. As far as special effects go, it's the 70s. It's a guy in a suit. But it's not bad. It works. It doesn't illustrate the werewolf. There is no Apollonian-Dionysian conflict there. There is no concept of internal evil. The guy is a bad guy. You feel for him, and he doesn't ask to be a werewolf. Something happens to him when he's a kid, and he turns into a werewolf. So he's not a... There's something there, but it doesn't really fit. The three ones that we're looking at here are, the Larry Talbot type who fight the werewolf because the werewolf's bad and he's good. Then there's the superhero type where the werewolf's good and he's good. The man's good and the werewolf's good. It's no longer Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's Clark Kent and Superman. Clark Kent may not like being Superman because he wants to be a normal guy, but he doesn't really have a problem with being Superman. He doesn't get ostracized. He doesn't kill people as Superman often, besides monster types. And when he can't help it, he has control over Superman because he is Superman. It's not superhero werewolves. There are superhero werewolves, and that's this stack here. This stack is more, you're a jerk when you're a man, and you're a jerk when you're a wolf, or werewolf. There's no difference there. There's no conflict. You're just using the werewolf to be your means or whatever, to suit your evil ways, and essentially maybe just using it as a what would it be? If anything, you're using it as a ski mask in a robbery. If you're killing people as a werewolf and you would have killed them anyway, but you were worried about getting caught, that happens more in some of these other ones. Wolf, for example, when we go over Wolf, which I think is in the stack. Yes, it is. Let's go over the Wolf. Wolf has a little bit of each. There's the Jack Nicholson character, who's turning into a werewolf. Michelle Pfeiffer, who's turning into a werewolf, and oh my god, I can't believe I don't remember his name. James Spader, who's turning into a werewolf. Oh shoot, I just spoiled it if you don't know the movie. You should know the movie. Great movie. Is it a Zemeckis? No, Mike Nichols film. Anyway, Mike Nichols. Nicholson is fighting it. The wolf isn't bad, and it's not good. It's neutral, and he's not bad or not good. He's neutral too. He becomes more of a assertive and whatnot, but it doesn't really change. He is fighting it though. There is, I guess it does belong a little bit in this character category too, because James Spader is a jerk, and his werewolf is more of a jerk, actually killing people and blaming Jack Nicholson's wolf for it. Michelle Pfeiffer is the superhero-y type, so you get a little bit of all three, but not really the main one, which is one we're talking about, where the wolf is bad and the man is good. American Werewolf in Paris and American Werewolf in London, which I don't own London. I own American Werewolf in Paris, which is the bad sequel, the worst sequel. It's not awful, but it's not great. Most people would say it's awful. I guess it's kind of awful. It's not good. The guy fights it because the werewolf side's bad, but he does wrest control of the werewolf side at the end. That's not as good as American Werewolf in London, where the werewolf's just bad, kills people, you don't have a freaking say in it. Etc. You get... let's just go through this one, because this one's awful, but if you get it cheap, if you find this cheap someplace, or you rent it for a night, it might be worth it. Wolves of Wall Street, it's really bad CGI, I think, or special effects aren't good. It's essentially Wall Street stockbrokers that turn into werewolves and kill people. And they induct a new kid into the pack, and he doesn't want to kill people. He wants to be a good person, werewolf, stockbroker, and all the other guys are bad stockbrokers and bad werewolves. So it sort of fits because he's fighting himself and he's fighting the other stuff, but it doesn't work as a movie. It's not a very good movie. It's worth watching to sort of get an illustration, but all right, may as well. Here you go. Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2. Obviously not horror. There is Apollonian and Dionysian conflict. The wolf is the pleasure seeker. The kid is the studious kid. Either not good at basketball or not good at boxing, whichever one you're talking about. Anyway, yeah. There's no evil involved. It's just... But it does have the Apollonian Dionysian conflict illustrated. The werewolf in Van Helsing... I gotta peel this label off. I talked about this one yesterday, or I'll talk about this one tomorrow, so it'll be the one you saw yesterday. Oh well, it's not going to go. Anyway, the werewolf in this one, the first werewolf anyway, what's his name? What's her name's brother, Beckinsale's brother, fights being a werewolf. He actually does wrest control over it, so he's not as much of a werewolf, but he's still pretty dangerous as a werewolf. There's conflict, there's internal evil, the werewolves are not nice, etc. So it's sort of there. This is turned inside out. I like in another movie called Blood Moon. I think it's something else in Europe. Does it say? It doesn't on here. But I think if you IMDb this, you won't find it under Blood Moon. You find it under something else. Tim Curry, Grace Jones. There's a few other people in here. If you know from the '90s stuff, the kid who played Iceman in X-Men is in there first as one of the bad guys. There's a few people that you're like, oh, I know him from someplace, but I don't know where. The plot is, it's a freak show. So the, quote, werewolf is the very hairy girl. Which I think is it Victoria Sanchez? Billed as Wolf Girl in the Traveling Freak Show that Tim Curry runs. So it's Tim Curry, so it's got to be great. And she starts taking hormonal dietary supplement, read that as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, to become pretty, to become normal looking. Because she doesn't want to be a freak, which is completely understandable. Except it makes her very, very aggressive and very, very evilish. So she has to fight it. She doesn't do a very good job of fighting it because it's the opposite way. She's getting more attractive, but she's getting more and more violent, and more evil, and more pleasure seeking, because she's getting attention. And it actually ends with a perfectly normal, perfectly feral human, normal looking but perfectly feral, actually beautiful looking, perfectly feral human being running around the forest and being violent, actually attacking people because she's violent. And everybody, of course, is at that point on the run looking for a wolf girl when they should be looking for a normal looking woman. It's an interesting concept. I think it works really well. I don't know if it's scary, but it is. Yeah, I'd say it's scary. There's some moments in there. I know the last one's Cursed. Christina Ricci. Was it Jesse Eisenberg? It is Jesse Eisenberg. Joshua Jackson. Joshua Jackson is the jerk werewolf. So is the Judy Greer. Is that Judy Greer? I don't remember who the female one was. Yeah, Judy Greer is the jerk werewolf. But Christina Ricci and, for the most part, and Jesse Eisenberg a little bit, see that there's danger there and fight against it. Christina Ricci more than Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse Eisenberg's more the superhero werewolf, because it's the kid. He's the nerd who turns into the cool kid, which is the teen wolf all over again. Of course, it's not really showing the werewolf as a werewolf yet. So, that's your standard definition. Those are the werewolves that I want to talk about that are werewolves. I have two other stacks here. There's another one that fits the bill, and that's the second Ginger Snaps movie. When Stephen King said that there weren't any good movies in 1980, for the last 20 years, he's right. After that, there was actually a couple. Ginger Snaps amongst them. This is sort of jerk werewolf. The second movie is sort of true werewolf. It's not as good a movie as Ginger Snaps 1. But it's much better than Ginger Snaps 3, which I own. Why am I missing these weird... I'm missing the good versions of some of these movies, and I have the bad versions. Nonetheless. So, Ginger Snaps 2 is Emily Perkins turning into a werewolf, because in Ginger Snaps 1, her sister, played by Catherine Isabel, turned into a werewolf. Emily Perkins has been in such great horror movies. She was one of the little kids in it. Not little kids. So Catherine Isabel was turning into a werewolf in the first movie. She's actually infects Emily Perkins, and Emily Perkins is fighting it in the second movie. She knows it's evil. She knows that it's sort of inevitable, even, but she's fighting it, and she's becoming more and more aggressive and more wolfish. And she's locked in a mental institution, which makes things a little bit more creepy. A lot more creepy. It's actually almost as scary as the first. Sometimes scarier, because there's creepy stuff going on. And there's a dangerous werewolf that was also infected in the first one after them. Let's see, what books do I have here? Here's my stack of books. Moon and the Wolf, as I said, it is not a very good illustration of standard werewolf that I was talking about. The Apollonian Dionysian internal evil concept, but it's there. None of these really do have that pureness. The Werewolf by Houseman, I didn't like it. It is one of those classic ones, like John Polidori's The Vampire. It's supposed to be one of the first werewolf ones. But I was I'm doing research for the history of horror section now. So I'm reading in the Lovecraft book, when I'm doing research, that there's earlier ones. So that doesn't even have that going for it. It wasn't that good. It was more of a complex discovery plot, and just wasn't that good. These two are on my list of things to read. Shapeshifters, compilation of shapeshifting books, and Full Moon City, which was a cheap version of, a cheap bargain book of werewolf books in urban settings. Haven't read them yet. Hopefully they'll be good. I think they'll be more actiony, or more, probably some of those are going to be romance too. One of the last great werewolf books that have been written recently, The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan. And the sequel coming out, I think it's out. I haven't read it yet. Tallulah Rising, and that's on my list. I got to read that soon. This is really good. I recommend this highly. Moondance, I recommend even higher. S.P. Somtow. Just anything by this guy. Just read it. It's going to be fantastic. It's just great. Just read it. Somtow is great. This is a book about European werewolves settling in the New West, the Young West of the U.S., and then running across Native American werewolves and their interactions. The European werewolves are more greedy. They're from the Transylvanian school. They're from castles and stuff. They're more rapacious. The little boy werewolf from that group is separated off and raised by the Indian werewolves, Native American werewolves, if you prefer. I think most people do. My apologies. Yeah. So, and then of course he grows up and he's conflicted because the Native American ones are nicer and less rapacious. They're more at peace. And the European ones are more rapacious. And eviler. And he becomes a serial killer. And he's locked up in an asylum. And that's where he's telling his story, sort of, through a investigative reporter type thing. It's a very good book. It's a very long book. It's a Tor book. How long is it? It doesn't feel like it was long at all, really. But 600 pages almost. So yeah, it's pretty long. And Cycle of the Werewolf. Also, it's by Stephen King. But it's not a Jekyll Hyde werewolf. It's a jerk werewolf. Sort of. And it's someone who knows he's the werewolf and is ambivalent to being a werewolf, which I guess would be the fourth category. He's just like, I'm the werewolf, but I'm me when I'm not a werewolf, so I shouldn't be blamed for what the werewolf does. That doesn't really work. That's not a horror. You're not talking horror anymore. It's horror for the kid, the main character, who's fighting the werewolf, but it's not, it's kind of a jerk werewolf, to be honest. The werewolf's the jerk, and the human's the jerk. This was turned into Silver Bullet. I didn't like it, and I don't think Stephen King does well at classic monsters. Stephen King, as I probably said yesterday, or tomorrow, as chronologically speaking, his strength lies in ghosts, The Creature Without a Name, and dark sci-fi. His Carrie and his Firestarter, and Danny Torrance. His vampires in Salem's Lot were not scary. His werewolves are not scary. His Creature Without a Name, frightening, very frightening. His ghosts, 1408, Shining, Duma Key, etc., etc. Frightening, terrifying. I'm not saying his dark sci-fi is terrifying, but it's got some scares in it, and it's good. I didn't really like Cycle. Pardon. I thought it was not scary. It was not a bad read. It just wasn't much to it. It was a novelette and a lot of illustrations as well. At like 127 pages, which is probably about as much as in here, really. But this is 127 pages with lots of illustrations. Oh well. Sorry, Steve. I like these a lot. I like Duma Key. I love Duma Key. I love The Shining. I love Firestarter. Is probably one of my favorites. Which should be redone as a good movie, because the movie wasn't very good. So we have... Let's just do the jerk werewolves. Oh no, let's go through this real quick. The ones that aren't in any category... Well, this one doesn't count because I haven't watched it yet. Neo-Wolf. Because it's got a label on it. Neo-Wolf. I haven't seen it, so I don't know anything about it. This one's just bad. Night of the Werewolf. It's someone who doesn't want to be a werewolf who's a werewolf, but it's a raised from the dead thing, and it doesn't work for me. Despite the fact that it's in a different language as well, that really doesn't bother me as much as there's just too much going on. It's very busy, and it's a vampirish werewolf versus a vampirish Elizabeth Bathory, Elizabeth. As Elizabeth, but it's not. That's Elizabeth? What's her actual name? Anyway, it doesn't matter. 13th Warrior isn't really a werewolf movie, in that it's not supernatural, but it is people who think they're bears. Berserkers. If you're talking about the Norse, the Berserkers are part of the thing. And that's part of where we get our werewolf myths from, is from Berserkers. And it's more of a complex discovery plot. There's a few of these that are. The other one, and then another one of the great movies that was made since Stephen King said that there weren't any good werewolf movies recently. This one, Dog Soldiers. Kevin McKidd and Sean Pertwee. It's not horror, it's action. It's jerk, I guess. The werewolves are jerks when they're people, and their werewolves are jerks when they're not, when they're werewolves. Except sometimes they're not. It's very pack-oriented, which is nice. It's just a good movie. I can't even... it's soldiers versus werewolves, and that's cool. It's Zulu if Zulus were werewolves, and I think they actually make reference to Zulu a few times, or the battle of Rorke's Drift. That's the word I was after. So, okay, so werewolves as... I'll go into werewolves as jerks. Moon of the Wolf, I mentioned. The jerk man is the same as the jerk wolf. Bad Moon? This is Mariel Hemingway. It's based on a book called Thor, and I have a feeling this book would be much better. Thor is the family dog, and he's the only one to suspect that Mariel Hemingway's, which is the mom, brother, the uncle, is a werewolf, or just a really bad dude, who started living with him after he went to the jungle and got bitten by something. So the dog sort of convinces the kid, and the kid sort of convinces the mom, and stuff goes down, and the dog saves the day. It's the dog is the hero, and that's kind of cool. But the werewolf is the jerk. And it also has a very bad beginning. It's almost a softcore. You know how some of these late night Cinemax movies begin with some sort of topless scene that's gratuitous and doesn't need to be there. It begins with one of those, and I don't like it. But nonetheless, it's there, and it's not a bad movie once you can get past this weird scene. Thor was the dog. Thor was awesome. It wasn't a bad thing. I'll go with it. It's cool. Skinwalkers, not a very good movie, and it's basically the werewolves are jerks when they're werewolves, and the werewolves are jerks when they're not werewolves. The same can be said for the Big Bad Wolf. The evil stepfather is an asshole all the time. He just seems to be a little bit more murderous and more easy to kill you when he's a wolf, or when he's a big bad wolf. Look at that. That's just gross. Not a very good movie either. I think I'd say pass on that one. The Howling 2. The Howling 3 is the marsupials, so I don't own it. The Howling 4 and Howling 5. Oh, Howling 5 and Howling 6 are there. I don't know what Howling 4 is. Obviously, I bought these a 2 for 1, probably for $2 or so. The Howling and Howling 2, I'll recommend both of these. The Howling 2 is Your Sister is a Werewolf. The Howling is the classic. D. Wallace, I guess, sort of fights it most, but that's very much only at the end. It's if you're a werewolf, you're a jerk. No matter if you're a jerk, if you're a wolf or a man, doesn't matter. You're a jerk either way. That's the point of it. It's a better movie. Actually, you know what? I think this hasn't been. This was made before American Werewolf in London or The Howling. They both came out in 1981, 1981. So this came out before the American Werewolf in London or The Howling, which were both, I think, acceptable in King's eyes. I can't see them not being, especially London. Yeah, no, I don't know. Sorry, that was that. Okay, so now we're on to Werewolf as Superhero. This is essentially, if it's not Superman Clark Kent, it's Bruce Banner, the Hulk. They still are superheroes. It's just, it's that kind of stuff. And of course, the Hulk is also a thing without a name, as I mentioned before. This is this stack here. Wolfen. This is Albert Finney and Gregory Hines, the late great Gregory Hines, and Edward James Olmos also. The werewolves kill people, and high-profile people at that. At first or at the beginning, I don't remember. There's some werewolf murder at the beginning. Albert Finney is the police guy that, the police inspector that Gregory Hines and the chief or whatever pull in to solve the case. It turns out that the werewolves are Native Americans that were from Manhattan Island when it was sold for beads or whatever whenever it was sold for $24 or whatever it was back in the beginnings of the country, before the beginnings of the country, in colonial era. So these guys have been living in New York secretly for 300, 400 years, and they have the ability to turn into wolves. And then they start killing, rich jerks, and they start killing good people and protecting people. They protect themselves too, so I guess it's sort of alright. I guess it's sort of, they have a dark side to them, because they do kill a couple people that aren't bad. But when the trail gets hot, they start going after the people that, one of the guys that suspects them. Underworld 2, Underworld 3. I don't own Underworld 2 for some reason. It wasn't a bad movie. I don't know why I don't own it. I will own it eventually. Underworld 4 is out now. I haven't even seen that one yet. This is an action series. It's Kate Beckinsale and leather, so that's great. The werewolves are ambivalent. They're not necessarily good. They're not necessarily bad. But they want to fight for survival, so that's their right to survive. They don't kill non-people. They don't kill people. I guess some of them do. The crazy scientist guy does. There's a point to it, though, so we'll find out. Blood and Chocolate. I watched the movie before I read the book. People who read the book before they watched the movie hated the movie. I watched the movie and then read the book, and I hated the book. There is about the worst adaptation I've ever seen in my life. There's so little besides some of the character names, there's nothing from one to the other. The title is the same, and some of the character names are the same. Otherwise, it's just miles apart. I prefer the movie because I watched the movie first, and the book seemed weird to me because I watched the movie like 2 or 3 times. The people who liked the book and then watched the movie hated the movie, and I don't blame them because it's nothing like the book at all. The setting's different. The characters are different. The good guy turns into a bad guy. The bad guy turns into a good guy. There's switching all around. In the book, the guy gets together with a girl. Sorry, the girl gets together with a guy. In the movie, that girl kills that guy. It makes no sense. None at all. And other people die in the book that died in the movie, and other people die in the movie that died in the book. It's just weird. So if you can only have one, and I'm biased, and I say you should read, and I say you should watch the movie. As a werewolf movie, it's a werewolf movie is superhero. The book is sort of also as well. But you can't do both. If you read the book first, you're gonna hate the movie. And unless you didn't like the book at all, I guess. And if you watch the movie first, you're gonna hate the book unless you hated the movie. It's an alright movie. The book was sort of teen based. I mean, not necessarily to the point of Twilight werewolves, which aren't. Obviously are superhero werewolves as well. And not horror, obviously. So the last ones are superhero werewolves. We have Kibakichi and Kibakichi 2. And there's labels over these, so sorry. It's Japanese import. It's Samurai Werewolf. And this is interesting. He does have some conflict between turning into the werewolf, which apparently he can do at will, which some of these people can. He doesn't want to turn into werewolf. I don't know why. It's not like he kills any less people by being in man form, because he's killing a lot of people with his sword because he's a samurai, and he also kills a lot of people at the werewolf, but there's not a lot of difference. He's killing people either way, so I don't know what his problem is turning into the werewolf. I know why he's reticent, because he's reticent to turn into the wolf because when he was a kid he turned into a wolf. Humans saw him, followed him back to his village of werewolves, and killed his village because they were scared. So he's reticent to turn into a werewolf. But when he's killing humans anyway, I don't see what the point is. Kibakichi 2, same deal. They're good. I like them. I like both of them, but they are superhero werewolf movies. I'm sure you'll find there's many more examples of both. And of course, werewolf does not have to be werewolves. It can be Dr. Jekyll's and Mr. Hyde's. There's 4 versions of this that I can think of. 5, because I have the musical version on DVD with David Hasselhoff as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and that is the greatest thing on earth. How can you go wrong with David Hasselhoff as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? My. At a musical, no less. So I saw the musical on stage, and that was creepy. Creepy. Mary Riley was a great version of the one I said before. I think John Malkovich. What was her name? Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts was Mary Riley, playing a bad Irish accent. If you can get over that, it's a great movie. Finished my hot water. Alright. Okay, so this is the third tarot card, the Werewolf. Next time, we're going to go over the fourth card, the fourth and a half card, really, which is the bad place, or the ghost, in the horror tale. This is the Tales of the Tarot, of course, in the horror tale. I'll see you next time. This is over an hour. Wow. I have a lot of werewolf stuff to go over. So, we'll see you next time on Horror Analysis, folks. You have a great night.